I used to struggle with blending quite a lot. I would follow a tutorial, but I would always ended up with something I wasn't really that proud of. Then I realized it was all because all the pros were using this underrated technique without really explaining it. What the f, bros? So in today's video, I'm gonna tell you what this technique is, why it works, and how to use it properly to paint more realistic models. Let me start the video by telling you the two main use for this technique, what are the benefits, and why should you use it in the first place. You can use this technique both with transparent paint and with opaque paint and all the things in the middle, because remember that opacity and transparency are not binary, but they are on a continuum. I have a list of free resources you can download in the description that should help you understand consistency and other stuff. Also, you can use it to build up and blend shadows, highlights, and middle tones. And lastly, all this will make you blend faster and easier. Before I start showing you how to use this technique, we need to answer a huge question with an H. Answering this question is what's gonna give you an actual realistic model. So we talk about highlights, shadows, middle tone, but in order to get those right, you kind of need to know where to place them. Here's a couple of things that really didn't help. Number one, the zenithal priming thing, which made me utterly perplexed and didn't help me at all understanding volume, especially because I didn't have an airbrush, had a rattle can. So no. Number two, looking at geometrical shapes, which maybe possibly helped a bit, but actually not really. On the other hand, here's what changed everything for me. Number one, most important of all, is copying others, but with intention. Not actually copying blindly, but copying, try to think about why that artist made that decision in terms of highlight placement. If you mindlessly copy, you won't learn really anything. Number two, thinking about planes instead of just the shapes. This is really a game changer. I have a cheat sheet down below you can download where I explain that more into depth. You don't just think about your geometrical shape, you are trying to break down those geometrical shapes into planes in order to understand which planes are facing towards the light and which are facing down towards the shadows. And this, I think, can make so much simpler than just seeing a cylinder and a sphere and trying to figure out what I'm looking at. And number three, with all that just said, what really helped me a lot as well was looking at 3D sculpture tutorials, because when you're sculpting digitally, your shapes don't have like a smooth finish, but they kind of are composed by different shapes. Number four, understanding that most important of all, painting light and shadows on our models is about interpreting those volumes. There's no super fixed rules about how you do it. You should look at the planes, it should make sense, but you can have like an interpretation. What I suggest you to do if you're just starting out trying to understand this topic, is just start by copying. Use frontal light instead of zenithal light. 45 degrees angle is good, but absolutely not from just above. Also, another thing that I would suggest to you if you are new to this is to start with the first use of this blending technique, using full opaque or near to full opacity paint. Why? Simple, because you will be able to sketch the main highlight points before blending it. This is a very similar approach to what I explained in more depth in my foundation system, which is the first miniature painting course that actually covers the real fundamental of painting for blend and smooth paint applications. So if you feel like you're struggling with paint consistency and brush control, brush pressure, all that, check it out in the link in the description. Improve, support the channel, please, so I can buy food for the cat and for me. Anyway, now let's tackle how you actually use this technique, starting from this first approach. I started from a base coat, which is gonna be my shadow color. Olive green, I think, from AK, and some black. Then I sketched in the volumes, always following the shapes of the model. For the muscle and organic forms, I focused on keeping everything kind of rounded because that's the way we are, kind of. Here you have two options. Option A is working on one area at a time, blocking and blending as you go. This can work, but it does come with the risk of losing the overall direction of the interpretation of the forms. So option B is my preferred method, which is blocking all the areas first and then coming back in with my blending technique. This helps keeping everything consistent across the whole model. So, method B. To start blending, I reapplied the paint with the same base coat consistency I used to apply the middle tone / highlight, and then I gently drag that base coat using very delicate brush movements. According to the size of the area you're reapplying the base coat on, you can just apply it on the edges or just paint the whole thing. It's really up to you. The more I move the brush towards the shadow, the less paint I want on it. The brush, I mean. But stop everything, because something is missing here. Because something very important happened between the reapplication and the actual blending. I used to think that this was just, rinsing the brush and going back with a clean one. That was it, right? Wrong. Rinsing the brush cleans out all the paint from the brush, and a bit of that for blending to work fast. You need a bit of transparent color. So what? Well, don't rinse it. Don't rinse it. Here I am actually using again a very magical / underrated tool, which is the dish sponge. How many things can this thing do? Instead of soaking my brush into the pot, I just removed the excess first on a paper towel, and then I used a moistened sponge to remove even more, while also not totally drying out the brush. You have no idea how much you can wick off from your brush and still have paint usable. And that's the paint that you want for blending. As I move farther away from the original paint application, I wick off even more, leaving a very small amount of paint on the brush. Professional painters do this automatically. Most of them are actually not aware that they're doing that. You have me! So lucky! The key of this technique is also the brush pressure that you use. The more delicate you are and the more control you are with your brush, the better. The second use is very similar, but like we said in the beginning, is with a lower opacity. Let me show you how it works. I started with the base coat that's intentionally lighter because, well, we're gonna create shadows. And we are gonna use, of course, thinner paint. The process is the same though. Apply the color in the proper area, unload on paper towel, unload on sponge, and drag the paint to blend. You can use any transparency really, the middle 50-50 opacity down to very thin glazes. This second use is slightly more advanced and it will give you smoother results even though the time investment is gonna be slightly higher. Not very unreasonable, but still a little bit higher. This approach also works better with shadows, which can be challenging for the beginners. And that's because when you're painting shadows, you're not sketching out the highlights. You cannot draw the shape on the model itself, but you still need to keep those shapes in mind in order to properly render the surface, but you cannot have them down on the model. Here, this actually caused me to make some mistakes when I was working on the volumes on the armor. I just personally find it very hard for me, and I'd recommend you use the second method not to build shadows from scratch, but to reinforce them. So don't use this to establish light placement, but just to refine it. So it's just harder, but it's also very good for things like skin tones, where you can use a lower opacity and really build up those color variation and veins and interesting stuff. By now, you probably are realizing that this technique that I'm talking about has an actual name, and you probably would call it feathering. Yes, but the problem here is how techniques are actually explained in general, and that's why people, when they're first starting out, when they're first getting serious about painting, also get really confused because it feels like there's hundreds of techniques and stuff they have to learn. Layering, feathering, base coating, glazing, stippling, and it's so overwhelming. But the truth is that confusion comes off the lack of organization of the techniques. What made it clear for me is there are 3 different clusters when we talk about painting techniques. Consistency used, so transparent paint versus opaque paint and all the things in the middle. Brush loading, and finally brush motion, where you have stipple, dry brushing, feathering, and dotting. The thing is, if you're not using stippling or dry brushing, you're pretty much always feathering your paint because it describes not a technique itself, but a movement. And the same with layering. You are always layering paint. And when you realize this, you realize that you can combine all these 3 clusters and create many ways of blending. That's the real cool thing about mini painting and art in general. You can combine stuff. You have many options. So it's just a matter of finding the right option for you. And guess what? Oh my God, what do we have here? Is it a full playlist with many different blending techniques? You might find your favorite here. Well, I guess you have to click it now. See you there. Oh, you see past me there because I recorded that. It's a multiple